Welcome to the Beyond Jiu Jitsu podcast, episode number 52. Returning to training from an injury related to BJJ.
Yeah, more specifically from surgery in my case.
Hectic injury.
Good morning, people, or good evening, good afternoon, good night. I don't know when you're listening to this.
Dude, this show's not live.
It's not. Then why am I wearing pants? Hello, everyone. Thank you for listening to your favorite podcast, I hope. Or one of, look, you're here. I'm okay
I don't know
with
if you
that.
saw it, but at the end of last year, 2021, there was Spotify Wrapped. I love Spotify Wrapped. And if you haven't
Is that
seen,
that little...
it's basically, it what Spotify does is it calculates, it tracks your data over the year, and then it
what
shows
you've
you
most listened to and
what you've
stuff.
most listened to, your favorite podcast, etc. We did appear in a lot of people's Spotify Wrapped at number one, or at least in their top 5.
Oh, thanks, guys.
And I even saw one person.
Mom.
I even saw one person. We were number 2 or 3 in their top 5 list, and then below us, directly below us, was Bulletproof's podcast. So I was like,
yeah, suck it, bitches.
I nearly screenshot it and sent it to Bulletproof Boys, but I thought, nah, that's petty.
Like, they'll see. No. No, those dudes are bigger than us.
No, they're not. Not anymore, son.
Nah.
But returning to training from an injury. Why are we talking about this topic, Adam?
So I just had 2 surgeries.
Penis enlargement.
Yep. I finally got one. I was like, hey, I ordered a bigger one. I had to do an exchange. It was a whole thing.
Yeah, I can't wait for my penis reduction. It's debilitating.
Yeah. Get it off your forehead, Kieren. No, so I just had a couple of surgeries. I think it might have briefly got mentioned on a previous episode where I was going into surgery.
It was, yeah.
But I just had elbow surgery. It's the first time I've had elbow surgery. Typically, I've had multiple knee surgeries. They're my problem area, if you will. But I had to have an elbow surgery for bone spurs. If you don't know what a bone spur is, it's essentially when you've got wear and tear in a joint, and the body's response to try to heal that wear and tear is to grow extra bone. Think like growing calluses on your hands. However, you don't want that extra bone in there. It then gets in the way. So I had such a massive bone spur that where these 2 bones in your elbow connect and interact, one of them is supposed to be like a concave, like a bucket sort of shape. But that had worn so much that the body's reaction had grown such a massive bone spur, or it had tried to repair the wear and tear, that it was no longer a concave bucket. It was like a mountain,
Wow.
So it hadn't even grown from being, a U shape to being flat. It was now an N shape.
Wow.
So that the surgeon had to go in and essentially shave all that back, and then as well as that, having grown this extra bone and continuing to train throughout the years, it had broken off some bits of bone. So I had bone fragments in my elbow as well. And this is like a long-term injury. So this isn't something that happens from, I should have tapped from that armbar. Now I have got a bone spur. No, this is decades of wear and tear on my elbow joint. And so I had that surgery. When was that? Right at the end of November.
Yeah, it was.
And then, we're right at the start of January now. So it was only about 5-6 weeks ago. And then 10 days after that, I had a sinus surgery. So I had earlier in 2021, I had a very run-of-the-mill surgery, a deviated septum surgery, which is where, your sinus is essentially broken and they have to straighten it out. It's quite a routine surgery. However, it didn't go 100% to plan. So they had to go back in and do a follow-up surgery. And that was only 10 days after the elbow surgery. So I finished off 2021 with 2 back-to-back surgeries. And now getting back into training in the new year, my sinus is okay. Like the surgery, again, didn't actually go super well. However, it's not an injury, or injury is not the right word, but it's not a condition that limits my training. Like I can still breathe really well through my nose. It's more to do with quality of life, that surgery. So the sinus has healed up enough that I can train. Immediately after that surgery, I couldn't. But it's more the elbow that is the primary focal point when we're talking about how to get back to training post surgery. For you, you haven't had this yet. You've had injuries, but you've never had a surgery. Before we go into my specific, like, current situation as well as previous surgeries that I've returned from, did you ever in your bodybuilding days, did you have any surgeries? Like, have you ever had a surgery due to an injury?
No. I mean, the worst injuries I've ever gotten have always been ankle. Even during bodybuilding days, the worst ankle injury I got.
How do you hurt your ankle? From squatting or something?
No, it was actually it was I was on a calf raise machine, like a seated calf raise, and my foot I had it loaded up, like it was fucking heavy. I was going for like heavy reps, and one of my feet slipped off the peg, and it put all the weight on the other foot, and it pretty much rolled my foot under like 80 kilos of weight.
Ouch.
And it was really bad. I'm lucky it wasn't worse than what it was. I was in like a boot for about 3 or like two months or something. Like,
really?
I was in a boot for a long time, and I did like heaps of physio and yeah, the road to recovery for that was pretty long. So I had some damaged ligaments and everything in there. It was swollen up like a balloon.
I know it's a off jiu-jitsu topic, but just quickly, what's the sort of most common injury that bodybuilders get?
Man, I think it's really long-term sort of stuff, and it depends on how you lift. Like if you look at old school bodybuilders, a lot of the time they have issues with their discs from heavy load, like heavy squats, discs and knees. So a lot of them have fused discs, replace knees, replace hips. So it's just a long-term impact on your joints.
Right.
And not all of them are doing the right mobility, or they're just lifting too heavy. You know what I mean? Yeah. They're just, because with all the stuff they're taking, with how strong they are, you just get heavier and heavier. You reach a point.
Their muscles are strong enough, but like the
joints just cannot get strong enough to support
that
weight long term. It's not humanly possible unless you have a replaced joint, right? Yeah. So I think those are the most common for your bodybuilding pros. In terms of like bodybuilders, like amateur level, man, if you're getting injured, it's just due to an error in the gym. It's
not lifting
correctly.
correctly.
You're just making a mistake in technique or something along those lines. Or like myself, you were careless during lifting, and you made an error, and it's, or like you dropped. I've seen people drop weights on their fingers, break their fingers, shit like that.
Oh,
but it's pretty nasty. But or like their feet, even worse. I saw a guy drop a dumbbell. It was a dumbbell on his big toe and like shattered his toe. So yeah, not pretty.
Speaking of dropping weights, and this is maybe a bit more jiu-jitsu related, because kettlebells are an awesome tool for strength work. A lot of what's the word? Like movements like Turkish get-ups and things that are super jiu-jitsu functional. Thank you. So kettlebells are a great tool. I know you've done this, but for the listeners who haven't done or know what like a bottoms-up shoulder press is with a kettlebell, it's where you're doing like a shoulder press, right? Where you like punch your hand to the ceiling, if you will. But a bottoms-up one is where you hold the kettlebell, and instead of like resting the grip
on the bell,
on the bell, and having like the kettlebell resting on the back of your hand and you can press or whatever, it's where you hold the grip and you put the horn and put the bottom of the kettlebell towards the ceiling. So it requires a lot of like grip and wrist and forearm stability. And it's actually one of the exercises I was given post elbow surgery, not straight away, but once, my rehab had gotten to a point, due to the amount of stability, and stability works, works a lot of those smaller muscles and things that, you don't get under traditional lifts. But when you're doing a bottoms up shoulder press and you're going like heavy for you, whether it might only be an 8 kilo kettlebell, but if it's heavy for you, right, it's all relative. And man, like you're pressing it above your head and it's wobbling, and you're like, if I drop this fucking thing on my head,
face,
man,
it fucking hurt, man. Yeah, all of that overhead shit can be a little bit scary, hey?
Yeah, even Turkish get-ups, I think they're one of the best exercises. But when you're, again, it might not even be a heavy weight, but maybe you're doing
heavy if you catch it with your mouth.
Exactly right. You could be doing heaps of repetitions. And if you've never done Turkish get-ups, they're a great jiu-jitsu applicable exercise because they're essentially doing a technical stand-up with a weight. But they're super hard as well. Like most of the time when I had done them previously with, you know, my strength and conditioning trainers, whether it was with like JT or Joey, usually only being told to do like 3 reps a side or something.
With
like
about 10% body weight, yeah.
Man, and they're hard.
Yeah, tough.
Like, you know, you do 3 and you're like, oh, that wasn't too bad. Then you swap to the other side and you're like, oh my God. And, you know, it starts wobbling and you think, well, man, if I drop this, like it's right over my head.
Yeah, that's
and
why
like you said, it
you
might
have to watch it the whole
you
time.
have to the whole time.
Keep
like
eyes
you
on the
said,
bell.
it might only be 5-6 kilos, but yeah, that's heavy if you catch it with your face.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
So don't do that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so returning post-surgery, or I guess post-injury, it's kind of the same thing, right? I mean, you just spoke about injuring your ankle and you didn't have surgery, but you're in a boot for 2 months.
Yeah.
You could have a surgery and not even need a boot. So, I mean, very, very similar topic.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that for a little bit. Of course, this conversation / advice, look, I mean, I'm always going to give the sort of asterisks that, yeah, exactly. Right. And it's going to depend. Some injuries or surgeries are way more severe than others. You know, if you're talking about, like fused discs or things like anything near the spinal cord, like, you know, that's a whole nother thing. But I'll just talk a little bit about me and my surgery. So when elbow surgeries are quite funny because thanks for listening to the Beyond Jiu-Jitsu podcast. If you'd like to join our Patreon.
Sorry.
They're quite unique in the sense that your post-surgery for a surgery like I had, you're quite from day one, you're pushed into quite an intense amount of rehab, because if you don't do the rehab with this type of surgery, you lose that mobility. So you're given, again, this is with my specific surgery. I'm not a doctor, and I'm sure there's elbow surgeries that you're like, it's the opposite, where you're not told to do what I was told to do. But the surgeon and my physio is a guy called Nick. Sorry, Nick, your last name is Beta, I think. Anyway, his physio is in Maroubra in Sydney, active physio, really good physio.
Shout out to Nick.
Shout out to Nick. Everyone who I've sent to Nick, like, and I've seen lots of physios over the years, man, you can just tell straight. He's one of those physios that you could walk in with the MRI and he'll be like, yeah, I'll look at it after you. And he'll diagnose you and be like, I think it's this. And then you're like, that's what it says in the report. You know, like he's really, really good. Yeah. Anyway, so with the guidance of Nick and the surgeon, they said that I had a 3-week window to work on the range of motion, on the extension of my elbow joint and the flexion of my elbow joint. And after that, at the end of that, more or less 3 weeks, whatever range I have, that's kind of what I'll have for the rest of my life, you know? But so how do you work on that? Well, they give you specific exercises. In my case, it's, you know, to put it simply, it's pretty much just extending and compressing your arm. But it hurts a lot. You know, it's super painful because you've just had surgery on your elbow joint. So the surgeon had prescribed me like super strong painkillers. I don't know, any US listeners, or, you know, you probably get this, like Tic Tacs, but, you know, Endone and what was the other one? Another, I can't remember, but another common strong prescription painkiller. And he had said to me, he's like, you know how usually doctors will say like, oh, only take if you're in pain, you know, like they'll prescribe you something, but they're like, only take it if you need it. Right. In this case, he was like, no, like you need to take the painkillers so you can push through the pain and do the rehab, because it hurts to extend your arm and it hurts to compress the elbow joint, but you need to. And my sister's partner had a different surgery, but he had a work accident and like fell off a roof and broke his arm and elbow quite badly. But he had an elbow surgery where it was the same thing, where he had to work to regain that mobility. However, unfortunately for him, he didn't have a surgeon or a physio who told him that, which blows my mind.
Wow, poor bastard.
And so he lost so much mobility that he had to go back in and do another surgery.
Wow.
So why am I telling you this story? Well, I'm telling you because I think the first road back to training post surgery or post injury is a good physio or a good surgeon, right? Like depending whether you had surgery or if it was just an injury. Because man, they're the ones that are going to guide you to get back to where you need to be to do what we love to do, and it's hard to find a good physio because they don't understand, or it's even harder to find a good doctor/surgeon because they don't understand what we do with jiu-jitsu. If you get a bad physio or surgeon or doctor, they just tell you, oh, it hurts when I do this. And they go, well, don't do that.
Yeah, they literally just tell you, like, don't do jiu-jitsu. Like,
yeah.
What?
So, and it's super important. So for me, I'm probably off like 1 degree off max extension in my elbow.
Your arm now, have you extending it now? Yeah, that looks great.
But it hurts to be there still. Yeah. I'm 6 weeks post-surgery. The surgeon said I wouldn't be able to do anything for 2 months. And I started rolling a week ago.
Yeah, we rolled twice yesterday.
Yeah. So
that's a rest round for you though.
Yeah, it's always a rest round with you, Kieren. Yeah. And you literally took a rest during the round.
Yeah,
Kieren went to sleep. Yep. But it's actually still, to be honest, my elbow's not great. It's still quite sore, and it was quite bad over Christmas. I spoke with my physio. This is another great thing if you have a good physio. My physio lets me text him on like Christmas Day. He doesn't care.
Wow.
He's really good like that. And we'd communicated through the holidays and said that I'd maybe the rehab was going so well that with his permission, it wasn't like I just went off and did things that I wasn't green lighted to do. We had moved up to the point where I was doing like chin ups or pull ups.
Wow.
And like more tricep work, like skull crushes and even dips. But then it like shattered my elbow, and we communicated, and he was like, man, maybe things were going so well. We maybe went a little too hard too early. So let's back it off. And, if you don't have this guidance and you're dealing with a severe injury, like at the end of the day, an elbow is not the biggest thing. But if you're dealing with like a lower back injury or something, man, this is something that if you don't rehab correctly, even ignoring jiu-jitsu and how much we put our bodies through, like a serious injury, like something to do with your neck or your back or something like that, or shoulders are notoriously difficult joints, right? They're really complicated joints. Like it could be, it could be life crippling. Literally, like if you don't rehab a slip disc correctly, man, you could have lower back injuries for the rest of your life, So if it's something super serious, or B, maybe it's not even that serious, like my elbow, but I'm now getting older. So it's like I'm not 18 where it regenerates overnight. You have to take the time to rehab it correctly. That is your first ticket. I know this seems very obvious, but people don't do it. Right? People don't. And I know people listening know people do. If you've trained long enough, someone who has been injured. Man, the amount of students I have that aren't training because of an injury, and it might even be the most lame ass injury.
Let's throw some examples.
So I stubbed my toe.
I did that yesterday. Yeah. Well, I was thinking about my toe. I fucking sprained it.
But, I know students that, maybe they've got what they think is a severe injury or something, but maybe it's not. But anyway, point I'm trying to make is they don't do anything about it.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, what'd the physio say? Oh, I haven't seen one. Well,
what are you doing?
I'm not telling you to throw money away, but if you think it's serious enough that you need to take 6 weeks off.
Why would you live with that?
You're either being a pussy, or B, like you probably want to get a professional to take a look at it.
Yeah.
100%. Especially because the people I'm talking about, they're not 18, because if you think back to that time, you do pretty much Wolverine overnight, and regenerate. But once you're talking to students who are in their 30s or 40s, a little niggle can be something that bothers you for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, 100%.
So if it's not something you can train through, you need a professional to look at it, in my opinion.
And do the work. Literally the second point I have written down here when I was preparing for this episode, which is alluding to the fact that we are both, on the same page, literally, is do the work. Literally do the work. And not only...
And I know it sucks, guys, but you got to do
fucking work. Like, stop being a bitch. Stop having a cry. if you have an injury, you first and foremost, I think that it's important to prehab things, like do your mobility. We've talked about this shit every episode, but we cannot beat this drum enough. Is do your mobility work, do your strength work. It will protect you. Like it will protect you from this sort of shit. And when you get injuries, it will make it easier, right? But
and for some people as well, sometimes you have a surgery that isn't from one specific trauma. So you might have a surgery scheduled for months in advance. Like it might be, this constant thing that's happening in your shoulder and you're not having surgery for another few months.
Yeah, my friend Zach's in that position. Yeah. Labor and tear from his like first month of jiu-jitsu.
So Zach could already be doing a lot of that.
He is,
rehab, prehab work.
Yeah, prehab,
because there's going to be a period of time post-surgery where you can't do shit.
Exactly.
Depending on the surgery. Like I said, my elbow day one, they're like, do this.
I think he's going to be fixed in like a 90-degree position for like 2 weeks where he literally cannot move it. And then after that, he's going to have to do rehab.
So prehab, if it's a scheduled surgery, super important. But I mean, other than that, like how can you avoid just that trauma in the first place? Well, strength and mobility training.
100%. Like it cannot be understated. And if the inevitable happens, you do get injured during jiu-jitsu, then once you are injured, you go and recover faster. And that's just fact. That's like,
but I do just want to mention, like I got to clear this up first. Don't be such babies with some injuries, right? Like sometimes it's not an injury, man. People forget that it's a contact sport, or even I don't even want to, it doesn't even have to be a contact combat sport. Like you're doing something physical. So little like bumps and grazes and stuff happen. Like you come across students who take a week or 2 weeks off because they, my finger's a bit sore. Literally, you come across people like that. It's kind of the equivalent of, imagine if you were wanting to learn how to skateboard and every time like you grazed your knee on the ground, you were like, oh, I better take a couple of weeks off till that heals, man. Or if you're learning how to rock climb and every time like your fingers were sore from holding onto rocks, or like, you grazed your knuckles because, you missed a grip or something. And I better take a week off.
Or like your fingers are ripped from like, gripping.
Yeah, you got a bit of a, yeah.
It's fucking
like, I mean, it's just part of the sport, It's, look at any sport, whether it's contact or not, people like you're using your body and it's better to have that bit of wear and tear. I mean, maybe tear is not the right word, but it's better to have that little, it's part of being active than be someone who, I just sit at a desk all day and now I've got a herniated disc.
And of course, like for those people that are like, disagreeing mentally out there, like, or whatever, and they're thinking, but you'll make it worse. Obviously, we're not talking about shit that if you keep training on it, you're going to make it worse, right?
Yeah, we said we're not doctors.
Yeah, we're not doctors.
Like, I mean, pain is something that's relative to you. Exactly. So, I mean, it could be some people, it might be a severe injury, like severe, and they'll keep training and you go, you're an idiot.
Exactly.
And some people, it's like not even a paper cut and they're wanting to stop. And you're like, literally, man, what are you, let's go.
I think a good example that you mentioned, like if you have a stub toe, right? Like you kick your toe on the wall, whatever, and it's fucking bruised. It's clearly not broken. You can train on it. You're not going to make it worse.
Well,
or
even if it's broken, what can they do?
Yeah.
Nothing. Unless your toe is like detached at a 90-degree angle. Like the doctor doesn't do anything with a broken toe anyway.
And we've spoken in the past about like how to train when you're injured, and you can go back, listen to that episode. It's titled, you'll be able to find it. And if you're in that position where you actually can't train, because you are dealing with an injury that will get way worse and you've been told that, then there's other things you can do. But I think if you have a air quote injury or like a niggle or something that you're just being a bitch, get some resilience about you, get on the mats.
Yeah, because as well, if we go back to the first point I said, having a good doctor and a good physio, if they're good, you should trust them. And sometimes there's actually a word in Portuguese for it, which is like that mental barrier where something will be fully functional and healed, but you've still got that hesitation about you, mentally.
I've got that with a very specific position, getting out of closed guard.
Oh,
Oh.
Oh, from your
Save it to
knee?
you OnlyFans. Yeah, from that knee
That knee,
little injury
yeah.
I had. Every time I'm in close guard now, I don't want to stand up to escape it.
Yeah.
I
Okay.
I get so nervous doing like
Really?
I was in your close guard yesterday and I was like,
Were
fuck,
you?
I don't want to stand up. And I was in someone else's and like even now, like I still do it because it needs to be done. But some like I try to escape without standing first, which is not good.
Hard work.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
hard work, not good unless you dig your elbow into their fucking thigh and be that dude.
That dude. No one
Yeah.
likes that dude.
No one likes that
But
dude.
no one likes you anyway. So, I
Yeah.
mean, you just lean into that.
Yeah, most likely.
Yeah. I forgot what I was saying.
What were we talking about? Yeah. Yeah, you're saying the Portuguese word for that mental barrier.
Oh, yeah. So you can have that mental barrier. But if you've got a good physio or surgeon, it's your job to break that. No one else can break that mental barrier for you. I remember when I was 15, I broke my wrist skateboarding, right? Had to have it in a cast for 6 weeks and everything. And I remember when they took the cast off, and I remember the nurse or the doctor who took it off, or was maybe the hospital physio that they quickly see you before you're discharged. And I remember them specifically saying, no, like you need to go back to using this arm. Like it's not broken anymore, but like mentally you still think like, and
you gotta be
it's
careful
all
with it,
tight
yeah.
and stiff. And they're like, no, like it's not broken anymore.
Yeah.
Like use it. It's been fixed, and you've got to push through that barrier. So, the thing with my elbow, it's kind of a similar thing similar but different, where the surgeon and the physio were saying, man, like I know it hurts, but as long as it's not like a 10 on the pain scale, like, you kind of got to push through that. Like all the research shows this and that. Pain is a great tool. Pain is a survival mechanism, right? To tell you not to do something. But, it's not as black and white as that. So sometimes you do just need to toughen up.
Yeah,
and-
particularly
and
if you got
get on
like
with
a
it.
sore finger or a stub toe or whatever.
Oh
like,
man, move on.
yeah. I
But-
mean, you would probably deal with that regularly, having particularly people that are new to jiu-jitsu come up to you and be like, oh, want to pause my membership for a month. I got a grazed knee. And you're like,
Yeah.
bruh, come on.
Yeah.
I can only imagine.
Happens all the time.
Mm.
Anyway, they're not listening. But then once you get back on the mats and you start, again, it's going to depend on the severity of the injury or the surgery, whether you're able to go straight back to rolling or whether you're being told that you can drill, whatever it is. Okay.
Yeah.
You're back on the mats. If you're recovering from again, the surgery I'm recovering from, I always, in the beginning, when I'm returning from a serious injury or surgery, I only roll with the selected partners that I trust, which in our gym is pretty much everyone, right? But let's say back to Brazil, when I was coming back from knee surgeries, there were people who I knew it's not like they wanted to hurt me, but they weren't going to go that extra mile to keep my best interests at heart and kind of work with me to help me be able to train while also, help me like gradually break down that mental barrier.
No, I totally get where you're coming
Or
from.
sometimes
Yeah.
it's not only a mental barrier, like with my elbow, my physio has said, okay, go back to rolling and even let people start to compress it and hyperextend it, but nothing crazy. So, there's training partners who I'm not going to let them compress because they're not going to do it in a controlled manner. Or there's people like, if they caught me in an armbar, they're not going to apply it in a, hey, this dude just had surgery on his elbows way.
They want the tap.
Yeah. So you definitely need to make sure you're training with the partners that you trust and they will help you break down that mental barrier. Right. And sometimes that can take a long time. Joey coming back from ACL surgery, that's a big surgery, and he spent a long time only training with a select few people to help him.
That's why he didn't roll with me.
He doesn't trust you, bro, to help get back that confidence and, to start, because you get to a point where your physio will tell you, man, we need to start pushing into that territory of, like how are you going to get back that strength, range of motion, stability until you start doing it, like there's not a great way to simulate jiu-jitsu without doing jiu-jitsu. So you get to a point where you have to do it. So you've got to do it with partners that you trust. Otherwise, the risk of re-injury is just too high, I believe. You know?
Yeah, that makes sense. So I wouldn't roll with anyone. Firstly, don't roll with people that you don't know, and maybe avoid the spazzy white belts for a bit. I can
Yeah.
say that now.
Yeah, you can say that now, being a blue belt. Yeah,
A blue belt.
It's like, oh, yes, I can finally look down on people.
I'm better than you. No, I'm not.
Now you can start doing that when a white belt's about to tap you. Like, stop
Yeah.
them and be,
Whoa, hang on a minute. Just under the chin here. Just yep. Fix your grip. Yeah, there you go.
Another great bit of advice of how to come back post-surgery is I'll refer back to my knee surgeries. They were really problematic. What was quite a simple surgery in terms of a knee surgery, which was just a bucket handle tear to the meniscus. It's a relatively simple surgery compared to like an ACL or you know, a patella dislocation or something like that.
Mm.
But they took me ages to recover from because I had also lost a whole bunch of cartilage under the patella. If you don't know, the patella is your kneecap. And what I had to do was for probably, man, until I got the full ability back to use my hooks, like as in butterfly guard, I couldn't really handle any load on my hooks with external rotation in my knees. So I couldn't do butterfly guard or X guard, right? So what did I do? Well, I just had to, I was forced to either not train jiu-jitsu or change my game. At that point in time, I did a lot of external rotation and had hooks in, whether it was De La Riva or X guard or butterfly guard, but I was always having my knees and hips externally rotated with load on my hooks, but I couldn't do that anymore. You know, it probably took 18 months of training before I physically could do it and no longer had a mental barrier to do it. So did I quit jiu-jitsu? No, I started playing more half guard. I started passing more, you know, and playing less guard. So I could still train. So if you're coming back from something that, let's say, I don't know, maybe, okay, we give shit on people with fingers, but you can have serious finger injuries like maybe you fully dislocate it, or your thumbs can be really problematic, right? Like if you have a serious thumb injury, there's so many like ligaments and tendons that connect into like the rest of your hand and wrist and forearm. So like if you hurt your thumb, that can be a big deal because it can like radiate up your whole arm.
Yeah.
So let's say you've got a serious hand injury, but you're a spider guard player. Well, man, like move on, start playing a different guard or start passing more. Like, oh man, I've got back problems. Okay, man, you're going to have to move on from bolos for a while, you know? So you can always work around it, and it can be a blessing in disguise. You know, it can force you out of a particular area. Again, I'll talk about Joey with his ACL surgery. You know, he was previously playing heaps of butterfly X guard, but then with his ACL surgery, lost a lot of that confidence. So he was forced to improve his half guard. So now his half guard's much better. So if it's a longer term injury, that's what you should be doing, right? Because you can train and avoid those areas. Jiu-jitsu is so dynamic that you can find positions that to some degree don't involve using that injured body part.
And ironically enough, a lot of people do that intuitively without realizing to avoid their deficiencies in like things like strength and mobility. Say if you're like a big dude that's really, really stiff, you know, and you don't have mobility in your hips and knees, you won't be doing butterfly guard. You know, you'll avoid learning that aspect of the sport because, you know, you can't be fucked to stretch or to work on your mobility. So people do that already without realizing and develop deficiencies which lead to injuries. But on the flip side, when you're coming back, you're saying that you can also apply the same theory, the same idea, but in a positive way.
Yeah. And you know, it's going to depend how intense you are about your jiu-jitsu. If you're someone who's pursuing it as a career, whether it's an instructor or a competitor, but you're just someone who's pursuing it to the extent where you refuse to take a day off the mats, you know, Travis Stevens in a podcast. Travis Stevens, if you don't know who he is, one of the best jiu-jitsu fighters and judo fighters out there. He won silver at the Olympics in judo, and I'm not sure if he's a black belt jiu-jitsu world champion or not. I'm a bit embarrassed that I don't know that, but anyway, he is tough as shit, super good. And he was in a podcast or something, and he said something along the lines of, "Oh, if you're not in an ambulance, you can train."
Yeah.
Which, look, is, I mean, it's not the best advice.
No,
I
yeah.
don't think.
Yeah.
But
I don't think
because,
so.
you know, you've got to balance it. I don't want to get philosophical, but my sort of, I don't have a mantra, but if you were to label it as like, what's my, if someone was to ask, what's your mantra? Like, I don't know. It seems pretty obvious to me, but everything in life has a price, and it depends if you're willing to pay it. You know, so for some people that price of becoming a world champion is not having any friends and moving away from their family, and they're willing to pay that price, and some aren't, you know. Or the price can be, a great example is like, you look at the Meow Brothers, man, and how wrecked their fingers and their hip joints. You look at them walk, they walk funny. You know, ballerinas are notorious for later in life having, you know, terrible hips and ankles and toes because of the punishment they put through their body, but they're willing to pay that price. A lot of bodybuilders know the risks of steroid use, but are willing to take that risk and pay that price because for them it's worth it, you know? So for some people, they will live and train by that. Well, if I'm not in an ambulance, I can train. I know people who have trained through horrific injuries that they should not be training, but you know that. It's up to them. We're not necessarily preaching to those people. That's a bit much for me.
I totally agree.
However, I want to reinforce that you guys shouldn't be little bitches.
Yeah.
Right? If it's just a little paper cut, man, you can keep training. You know, if it can be a serious injury.
Yeah, you got staph, don't worry about it. Just rock up, start licking
staph,
things.
ringworm.
Yeah.
It's all fake news.
You got the Rona, don't worry about it. Sneeze in my mouth.
Oh, gross. You know, you can, like when I say a serious injury, I'm not talking about things that can leave you paralyzed, you know, but I mean like it can be an average surgeon, an average doctor or physio would be telling me not to train right now with my elbow.
Right.
But I can totally train and I'm not going to be doing any long-term damage to it. Like I know I can train and I'm fine. You know, yeah, I might take an extra day off here and there that typically I wouldn't because I might, it's a bit sore or whatever. But man, like it goes on. You know, you get to a certain point if go back to what I said at the start, if you've had a good doctor, surgeon, physio, and they've guided you in those initial like super important rehab period, and it's going to be different for every injury or surgery. For me, it was that 3-week window that was where I had to work really hard. Once you're past that, I don't know, man, have your trusted training partners. That's your next bridge. And then after that, if it's a long-term thing, you're going to have to change your game. If it's not a long-term thing, like with my knees that took forever, if it's not, then man, just get on with it.
Yeah.
Don't be a dick, tap early, like, you know, classic, leave your ego at the door.
Yeah.
Like for me, let's say you and I were rolling, right? And you would be like, I don't know, let's say we haven't seen each other in a while and we're rolling and you'll be like, oh, how's your elbow? And I might say, oh, it's fine. Yeah, it's okay, but let's roll normal. And if you got me in an armbar, I'm just going to tap early, you know, like, I mean, or whatever it is. If my knees were bad and it got compressed really bad, I'm going to tap, or I'm going to say like, oh man, can we change sides? Like when we're not competing, you know, fucking get on with it.
Yeah, don't be a bitch. But also at the same time, obviously, as you've mentioned throughout, don't go too hard, too fast. Be intelligent in your return. Have a plan, have a strategy. Don't just go in and fucking wing the whole process. Have something either written down or in your mind about how you're going to approach this, whether it be doing your rehab work correctly, even after it starts to get better. Keep doing it. You know, don't stop when it gets better.
Yeah.
Pick your training partners. Maybe just come back and start drilling, you know, push your boundaries, get into that uncomfortable sort of stance. But also if your injury isn't a real injury, like if it's just uncomfortable or if it hurts, stop being a little bitch.
Yeah.
Like if you're going to give up in jiu-jitsu when maybe you got a cut on your finger or whatever, obviously, you know, not talking about staph or any of that shit, you know, take everything here with a grain of salt. If you can actually train, right? If it's a stub toe or maybe it hurts for a bit or you know, don't be a fucking bitch. Because if you give up, even if it's just a hobby to you, right? Maybe you're thinking, oh, but this is just a hobby. Why would I put myself through pain? But do you give up in everything in life when shit gets a bit painful? You know, do you give up in work when the project gets too difficult? Do you give up at home in your family life when, you know, maybe the end of your tether? Like
Yeah,
how you do one thing is how you do everything.
I actually draw parallels uh, between the mental side of someone's, because for me, jujitsu is my job,
Mm.
right? Like, I mean, it's what I love to do, but it is also my job. And I think the what my body goes through, like sometimes people will ask me, like, oh man, like why did you train? Like your elbows so, or like, man, like you hurt your back yesterday. Why did you train today or whatever? And sometimes there's no excuse. Like I need to train because I don't know, I need to help a student with something, or someone came in, a new person came in and I had to roll with them or whatever it is. And I put my body through things that maybe aren't sometimes not even good for it. Like, but it's kind of, for me, it's no different to someone who has a job and you look at them and you go, man, why are you getting stressed out answering emails at 10 p.m. at night?
Exact same.
Like it's not good for your mental health.
Yeah.
Well, this wasn't necessarily the smartest decision for my body, but like it had to get done.
Yeah.
You know, like sometimes you've just got to do it.
Yeah.
And okay, if it's just a hobby, but there's other hobbies you might have. Maybe your hobby is something not physical at all, like playing chess. You know, and every time it's stressing you out because you can't beat this one person or you can't figure out this blah, 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 and you just give up and just fucking get on with it. You know? Yeah, it's a physical activity.
Work around it. Yeah,
it's
100%. I could not agree more. I could not agree more. And I think I get frustrated because I'm on Reddit a lot, on BJJ subreddit.
This is a crap subreddit, bro. Like I'm on.
I think it's okay. I think it.
Look,
there's a certain sort of
it's okay
group think about it in certain topics that just fuck me off. And one of them, I
love Reddit, by the way.
Yeah.
The BJJ subreddit
it's got nuggets of gold, but there is a group think, and particularly when topics about competing, or what I find is someone will post a thread, right? And this is relevant to the topic, so don't worry. Someone will post a thread about something that they may be insecure about or something that they want people to agree with them. For example, they might say something along the lines of, I don't want to compete because jiu-jitsu is just a hobby to me, and what do you guys think? And then the thread will be flooded with people like, yeah, competing's, why the fuck would I bother? Why would I drive 3 hours to lose the first round and risk my job? Why would I do this? Why would I do that? And it's basically perpetrating a group think about reinforcing people's insecurities and bitch mentality. Is the way I see it.
So you're pretty much describing the internet.
I'm pretty much describing the internet. Yeah. And then it gives a disproportionate like view. If you're an outsider looking in and you read just that thread, obviously it attracts people that agree with it, right? There's no one that's going to disagree with it and come in and comment, because they'll just get downvoted like a million times. But it's another. The reason that is relevant to this is if you have like a niggling injury and you seek condolence by someone else that has the same mentality as you, they're gonna, or like a family friend or whoever that doesn't train jiu-jitsu, they're just gonna be like, yeah, well, why are you training with a cut hand? Like, why are you training with stub toe? Your toe hurts, bro. Just
so what I'm taking from this is I should get my medical advice from
Joe Rogan,
Reddit, and Joe Rogan. Yeah,
yes.
but you said a minute ago, yeah, be intelligent as well. You know, where the topic for this episode is, you know, come about due to me coming back from a surgery.
Mm-hmm.
So even when I started rolling like a week ago or whatever it was, you know, I asked all my training partners, oh, do you mind if you're on top and I play guard? Because then I had, you know, before my arms got involved, so to speak, you know, I had my guard first, my legs were there. Whereas if I was on top passing, you know, your hands engage first. I was worried that if I was getting swept, like the reflexes to post, and if I posted on that sore hand/arm, it was going to hurt my elbow. So I was intelligent in the way that I said, oh, do you mind if I play guard? Again, I'm not talking about, this wasn't comp training. We've spoken before about, you know, comp classes where it's like, well,
don't show up if you're injured.
Yeah, like, you know, if you're at a gym where the comp classes are run like, no, like, these classes are pretty much like the rounds are going to be the same as you're in a competition. So if you say to someone, I can't do this, like that's, you lose. So don't turn up to those classes. Right. But that wasn't the case. We're just talking a generic jiu-jitsu class. So every training partner, the trusted ones that I would train with, I still needed to take an extra layer of sensibility and say, oh, can I play guard? Because I just don't want to, again, another very recent surgery, Joe with his ACL, he just played on top for ages because that's where he didn't want to play guard and
compress his knees. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So also be intelligent about it.
Yeah. 100%. Well, if you have an injury out there and you're returning, hopefully this helped you out. And, this
you see someone taking notes and they're just like, don't be a bitch.
Yeah, that came up a lot. But again, it has to be said because if you click on this episode and you have a sore hand or, you've stubbed your toe and you thought that we're going to be like, oh yeah, just take some time off. No.
Nah.
Not talking to you. Get on the mats.
Oh yeah. I mean, remember, we're not doctors. Obviously, some injuries, you've got people that it can be a severe injury and they're like, it's fine. And other people that are like, oh my God, I can't even. And it's the tiniest little thing. But if we're talking serious, legitimate injuries / surgeries, if you take one thing out of this, you need to have, I would say more important than a doctor, is a physio who understands jiu-jitsu because doctors will just tell you if it hurts, don't do that. You go to a doctor.
It's not their job.
And say you've got a sore back and you work at a desk, they're going to tell you to get a standing desk. Right? Or then stop sitting down at a desk, get a standing desk. If you go to a doctor and say, I've got a sore back and they go, what do you do for work? Oh, in an office. Oh, I've got a standing desk. They're going to say, oh, maybe you should get a chair to, sit down. They just tell you to do what doesn't hurt.
Yeah.
But a physio, right, but even then you need someone who understands jiu-jitsu. They don't have to train it, but they need to know a bit about the sport, and what you're trying to do with your body. Because it is so unique and dynamic that to the uneducated of the jiu-jitsu world, they're going to tell you to pretty much not do jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, 100%.
But that's also a lot of sports. There's a lot of sports if you were a swimmer and you had a shoulder injury and they're just going to tell you, oh, look,
Michael Phelps walks into a physio and he's
Oh,
just stop swimming, bro. What are you doing?
Yeah, right. So, you got to find someone who understands the activity that you're wanting to do.
Yeah, 100%.
Right?
Cool.
All right, guys. Well, thank you for listening. Episode number 52. We're looking forward to the year ahead, 2022. Lots of cool things happening. If you want to follow the ride, obviously you got the episodes on Spotify, whatever your listening platform is. You have our Instagram @BeyondJiu-Jitsu_podcast. If you want some extra loving, we've got our Patreon. The link tree is on the Instagram. I think that's all I've got to say on that matter.
Yeah.
Anything else, Kieren?
No, thanks for listening. Catch you next time.